All signs seem to be pointing to Payton Thorne being Hugh Freeze's next quarterback.
Freezing temperatures are likely for several hours inland and a few hours closer to the coast.
Yes.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. And the everydayers know that we're joined by Darrell Dapprich today. So that means we're bringing the sauce, bringing the heat, because look, I think we're close, Darrell. I mean, you started to see kind of a lot of smoke come from different directions, with all signs pointing to Payton Thorne, the former Michigan State quarterback, being connected to Auburn more and more. We've been all over this from the get-go, Darrell, but it seems like we're the closing stretch with all of this since he's entered the portal on Sunday.
Yeah, I feel that way. You see some beat writers and some national talk show hosts and, regional talk show hosts coming right out in Twitter and being very, very transparent about it. In fact, an hour ago, Cole Kubelik, former Auburn center, had probably the greatest tweet, an 80s reference to "Every Rose Has Its Thorn," a great power ballad there, way before your time, Zach.
Sure.
But with him saying that, the reason why I bring that up and being a little bit out there with it tells me that it's just a matter of time. I feel like, unless, things can happen, things can change, but all signs point and indicate to that, from Brian Stoltz, who's really close to Hugh Freeze and in his
Extremely.
ear. Extremely. And things like that, saying
and the fact that he was putting it out there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure he's been given information from Coach Freeze, but it's like they're friends. He's not going to jeopardize that. So the fact that Stoltz put it out, Stoltz is a very good writer with Auburn rivals. The fact that he put it out there, to me, was like, okay, here we are.
I think you would. Don't you agree that you would have to have some sort of permission or acceptance, as close as he is to Hugh Freeze, to do that? I think that there's an underlying factor that he's not going to go rogue and say that without the blessing from Hugh Freeze, in my opinion.
It certainly feels that way. I think we could read in between the lines there. I don't want to speak on behalf of Stoltz, but I mean, he then responded to a few questions and said it's like a 99.9% chance. It's like, okay, he's not saying that unless there's some substance to it. You saw it from this CFB transfer portal tracker that has been right on some stuff. They've also missed a few things. It's got the check mark. That doesn't mean as much as it used to, but that is what it is there. They said, according to sources, it's going to happen. And look, Darrell, we've got similar sources. I've kind of thought he was the favorite to be Auburn's next quarterback since he entered the portal, based on kind of people that I've talked to. And then the Casey Thompson thing, the fact that Casey Thompson left, and it's like, it seems like Casey Thompson's now the backup plan. And I think all signs now point to Payton Thorne. It all but backs it up, and I think it all but confirms that he will be an Auburn Tiger quarterback, I think, by the end of the weekend.
The verbiage, getting back to the tweet that Stoltz came out with, is when you talk about sources and things we have heard, mirrors a lot of those same sentiments. Like, this was Hugh Freeze's guy. This is the guy he targeted when he got into the portal. This was the guy that he targeted as wanting for Auburn. And it piggybacks what Hugh Freeze said in Huntsville last week at that ambush event, where he said, look, Auburn fans are all excited when quarterbacks jump in the portal, get this guy, get this guy. Then he says, I look at the film and I'm like, no, he's not it. I'll know who it is. And then boom, 2 or 3 days later, I don't think that's a coincidence. I think his patience is paying off. Being picky is paying off.
Darrell, I talked to somebody on staff, and they said that Hugh Freeze's involvement in Payton Thorne's recruitment was significantly larger than everybody else that's been in the portal. And I'm sure he's been very involved with everyone else that's in the portal. But for this one, it appears, Darrell, that this was a can't miss one for Hugh Freeze. And I mean, it's not official yet, but I think it's dang close. I think it's as close as it can be until he makes a formal announcement and formally enrolls for summer classes.
That's why I trust the process in his evaluation of quarterbacks. At the end of the day, waiting this long was a little frustrating for Auburn fans who lost patience. But we just said trust in Hugh Freeze. He's a quarterback whisperer. He knows what he's looking for. He has a good track record. So at the end of the day, that just reinforces it for me. And I feel even more content that this was the guy that he really took a big, big lead on, a big part in. It makes me feel comfortable and confident that we have our guy.
Yeah. Now that, hindsight's 2020, and we're making a big assumption here that Thorne will be Auburn's next quarterback. I mean, it's not official at the time of us recording this, but I think we both got a pretty good feeling. I don't think some of the stuff that came out today would have happened if that wasn't the case. But if now that you're able to look back and see all these other quarterbacks that were in the portal, I mean, it kind of seems like this one makes the most sense.
It does. I think the only other one that I would have gotten this excited about was Grayson McCall. The other ones like Spencer Sanders and the kid Nolan from Oregon State and some of these others, that was Buckner. That's an example of just taking a quarterback for the sake of taking one. You want to elevate your room. You want to enhance the performance. And I think Grayson McCall was the only other name in the portal that I got excited about at this level, having watched Thorne's tape, his film, having sat as a very sad former Pitt Panther follower on the Peach Bowl and watched Thorne just shred our secondary.
Sure.
So, I mean, I watched that. I was like, who is this dude? Because that was his first year. He had a great 2021. He made some great throws, that year, and I saw it firsthand. So that's why the excitement level for him, if this pans out, is at a level only that I saw when Grayson McCall jumped in December, and I thought Auburn had a real shot to get him.
Well, I think they did. I just don't think they could. I mean, right. I think that was a Grayson McCall thing. It certainly seemed like Auburn was his number one option, and then Florida was too, and it didn't work there either. So we'll see. Yeah, the Casey Thompson stuff, I think that would have been a good fit too. I can't shake but think the 2-year option with Payton Thorne versus the 1-year option for Casey Thompson is another thing that Hugh Freeze is looking at here. We've talked to folks close to the program. 2024 is his date. The 2024 playoffs is something that is on Hugh Freeze's radar. And it's easier to do that if this will be an experienced quarterback that is the second year in the system, and he'll have played a ton of college football by, next season, assuming he's a starter for Auburn this year. And all of a sudden, it's like, okay, you'll bring back all of your receivers, right? Javarius Johnson should still be here. Camden Brown should still be here. Maybe some of these young guys step up that Hugh Freeze and the staff have brought in. Maybe you're a receiver away and you can kind of make that pitch in the portal period next year. And this offensive line, I think, is kind of in a situation that looks good moving forward. So, I mean, there's a lot of ifs to this, but you can kind of see the path to where it's like, man, I think we're a season away from being really, really competitive at Auburn again.
That's why in the portal, when you talk about adding weapons, I think this would be the first domino to fall. You want to go get a receiver that's a big play receiver that can play 2 years too. Obviously, if you get that big guy that can play and make an impact for one, you take him. But I think more than likely to kind of mirror what you've got with Payton Thorne. And look, I'm gonna say this.
Is that guy in the portal though, Darrell? Right now, like, is Montana Lamonius Craig that guy? Well, is the Burton kid from Ohio State that guy?
The kid from Texas San Antonio is that guy. I like him a lot, and crazy stat. If he comes over to Auburn with his stats, he would be Auburn's leading receiver career-wise with his numbers that he has at Texas San Antonio. Now, obviously. Yeah. It's a different playing Power 5 football compared to Group of 5. But I will say this, and I don't want anyone to misconstrue this as a comparison of player to player. I'm comparing scenario to scenario. When you talk about 2024 and maybe Payton Thorne coming and playing next year, and then 2024 being the year, that seems eerily similar to another Big Ten quarterback coming from Ohio State to LSU that made LSU's quarterback room better in 2018, but really took the next step in 2019. I'm not saying.
So you're saying Payton Thorne's the next Joe Burrow?
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying you see how the scenario could play out to where you go to another level after the second year. And
Camden Brown, the next Jamar Chase, confirmed.
And I will say this: Thorne's a little bit ahead of the game, because he played 2 years in the Big Ten already and put up some great numbers where Burrow did not. Now, Burrow's a generational talent. I get that. Right. But I'm saying the scenario is when you earmark 2024 like you did, that lines up perfectly with getting your feet wet, playing in 2023, building a roster around him, getting a guy in the portal right now that the dominoes have fallen, getting a receiver to follow the quarterback.
All right. Who, assuming Thorne gets here, what does the fall look like for the Auburn Tigers? We discuss in just a moment right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Built Bar. Darrell, you love Built Bars. I love Built Bars. I got to tell you, guys, I'm down 11 pounds. Built Bar is a part of that. It is a great treat where it's like only 150 calories and it keeps you full. When I need something sweet in the afternoon or in the evening, maybe after dinner, grabbing a Built Bar, way better than getting some ice cream or something like that. And it tastes pretty good. We're not just saying that. I love the puffs. I ordered the peanut butter puffs. I talked about them so much. Then Darrell had to. I'm a great influence on you, Darrell. You're welcome. But they're delicious. Are they not?
They are. And, this proudly say I'm down 18 pounds. So
Good
this
for
podcast is down 33. I want to see another podcast out there that's done that. But anyway,
we're building
the Built Bars in the afternoon. I get cravings. And I used to go to the vending machine and get that Three Musketeers. Now I reach over and get the Built Bar, and it's really been a lot healthier for me. It really has. And it's keto friendly, which is what I'm doing. Yeah. High protein, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so check it out, built.com. You will not regret it. Use promo code LOCKEDON15, LOCKEDON15, no spaces, LOCKEDON15 for 15% off your order at built.com. Darrell, the reigning starter is still Robby Ashford, especially with TJ Finley gone. What do you anticipate this battle looking like, assuming Thorne does come to Auburn?
Well, I don't think you go out and get somebody in the portal with this much energy and this much enthusiasm. Sure, there's going to be a competition. I think one of the things we heard back channel wise is that Hugh Freeze was not going to guarantee the starting spot to anybody. And there may have been some people that wanted that guarantee. And he's like, no, you're going to have to compete.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, I think that the attributes that a quarterback like Payton Thorne has, not to sell Robby short because he's a battler, he's a warrior. I love the kid's heart. I love what he can do with his legs. He's dynamic to a certain extent with different degrees. But if you want to elevate the passing game and you want to make it better than it was and get receivers here that, are attractive and desirable, I think at the end of the day, Payton Thorne has to be your guy. And he ends up, I think, winning the job. Shows enough in the summer as to why Auburn went out and got him.
So I'm just asking this question. It's impossible for us to know this far out, but I do think it's worth some part of our brain to kind of think about it at this point. So Thorne or whoever Hugh brings in is going to be at somewhat of a disadvantage, right? Because you didn't go through spring. I mean, this is a brand new offense. It's going to be a brand new playbook. You got to rebuild. Or not even rebuild. You got to build chemistry with receivers, offensive line, running back, all this stuff. And you're moving from Michigan to Alabama, which that's a win. That's certainly a win, I would think.
Yes.
But it's going to be a lot. Summer, can you imagine? He's going to be like burning up this summer. But the fact that he hasn't really gotten those reps, do you think there's any pressure or any kind of importance in narrowing the battle down to just two people and then to one person at the quarterback battle so they can get more reps throughout fall?
That's a good point, and I think that's going to have to be decided because on one hand you want to give the person that's going to be the eventual starter more reps, but on the other hand you want it to look like an open competition. You don't want to isolate or alienate Geriner either. So if you make it a 2-horse race, you're basically just sending the message that he's disposable. You don't want that. This kid could end up being good. He could compete with Walker White after Payton Thorne graduates. So you've got to be very careful and pick your poison. Do I give more reps to the eventual starter at the sake or the, basically expense of alienating a Holden Geriner? And that's where you just got to be careful. I mean, I don't know the answer to that. I think once he gets on campus, and you start watching him go through practice and that kind of thing, if it looks like he needs more reps, then maybe you make that decision at that point.
Yeah, and then if you're Hugh and you've got Payton for 2 years, are you worried about Holden Geriner? I mean, I hate to ask that question because I like Holden Geriner. I love his upside, and I think he's got a great throwing motion. But it's Hank Brown's his dude, the baby goat. and you get Payton for 2 years, and then Walker White's committed, which 247 compared him to Will Levis. Do you see that?
They
did. That was their player comp, was Will Levis. So that's interesting. I actually texted him about that. I'm like, your thoughts? He's like, I'm honored to be compared to a second rounder. I'm like, cool, good answer, Walker. But yeah. So I mean, how is Holden Geriner needed? If you're Hugh Freeze, are you concerned about Holden Geriner? I don't know. I genuinely don't know the answer to that question.
I don't think you are. I mean, I think you don't want to.
I agree, and it kind of stinks.
Yeah, you don't want to send.
Holden.
Yeah, you just don't want to send that message, though. I mean, it's hard when you're recruiting quarterbacks down the road. You don't want the appearance to be that you just kind of threw a kid away in that scenario, or didn't give him a fair shake or a fair chance to win the job. I think that's something that needs to be considered.
I'm with you. So we will certainly see what that looks like. As far as the decision for Hugh Freeze apparently to go after Thorne more than Casey Thompson, are you cool with it? Do you think it makes sense for the current state of this program?
I thought all along, I just had this really strange feeling, and I've talked about it with you, and you kind of felt the same way, that it was going to be Casey Thompson. I was like, all the tea leaves are pointing to that. And then Thorne came out of left field. I was very much in the Casey Thompson boat, was very happy with that. But when I've watched highlights and film and game footage of Thorne, I am okay with that. I think that there's a little bit more upside besides the 2-year thing. I think there's a little more arm talent there and a little bit more big playability down the field. Now, Thompson does more with his legs and scrambles and is probably more of an traditional RPO guy.
Statistically, that's not really true.
Right.
But eye test wise, it's certainly
eye test wise, exactly.
He's definitely more athletic. Yeah.
So at the end of the day, when you're looking at a running back room that's as great as Auburn's is right now, or the potential to be great, you need to absolutely focus on a higher level passing game, and whoever's the better passer or has the potential to throw for more yards, put it in tighter windows, that's what you have to go with. And that's why I think Thorne's the guy.
So perhaps Auburn could have a quarterback that's a thorn in the side of opposing defenses. Are McCloudy days ahead for opposing quarterbacks? We discuss that in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Want to encourage you to join the Locked On Auburn Discord. You can tell me how bad that transition was and how bad of a dad joke that was. Feel free. But yeah, click the link in the episode description down below to join our community over in the Locked On Auburn Discord. Jalen McLeod, the former App State edge player. He's going to be listed as a jack linebacker once he's at Auburn, Darrell. But what were your initial thoughts about this guy? I know you have high praise for this kid.
Man, when I saw all the jack linebackers that went into the portal, this guy, and I want to pronounce his name right, is it Ukwu from James Madison?
I've been saying Ukwu. Yeah.
Those were the two on my, Christmas list. I know we looked at Steven Sings and Raheem Thomas and some other guys, but those two guys were the guys that stood out to me. Let me tell you why I like McLeod so much. Not only did he have all the physical attributes and just the speed and the first explosive step and just all that stuff, leverage. I look at players that come from group of 5 schools, even if they have gaudy statistics and they ball out. I go back and try to look at highlights in game film from when they played Power 5 schools. I was watching the A&M App State game live because, like everybody else in the SEC, I wanted to see Jimbo get beat by a group of 5, and I was reveling in it. And I kept seeing 35 make plays all over the field, including that big strip sack, fumble, whatever that he did. He just looked different, and he had a really, really good game against Texas A&M, who's an SEC Power 5. To me, that's when I was sold. I get what you want to do against Louisiana and Coastal Carolina and all that, but when you play the big boys, how do you measure up? And you could tell he was a difference maker on the field against A&M. I love his athleticism. I think it's if you could handpick a jack to get in this lineup and on this defensive side of the ball, it would be McLeod. I'm very excited about that addition.
Yeah, 5 quarterback hurries against Texas A&M. If you give me 5 quarterback hurries against every SEC team you're playing, yes, please. The NFL will also take that, by the way. So when you look at his size, and there's a lot of inconsistency with how big he is, which is a little annoying. But some places say like 6'1", 230. I've seen 6'2", 220. Regardless, they're smaller than the 6'5", 6'6", 260 that we're currently looking at on the roster with Elijah McAllister and with Keldrick Falk. Do you think his role will be different, or do you think they can play him on all three downs?
I think you can, because I watched how he played the run, and one of the big things in A-Day that was a big problem was setting the edge and letting the ball carriers bounce outside. He has very good speed sideline to sideline and did a good job, in my opinion, in containment with the running backs and setting the edge. You know, McAllister and Falk are going to have to do that. They're going to have to. That's part of the edge, or the jack linebackers, not just pin your ears back and be an edge rusher. You're going to have to tackle somebody in space that's running the football as well on the edge when they bounce it outside. The speed and quickness he has sideline to sideline showed me he can stay on the field all three downs.
Yeah. And I think that's exciting. I'm a little less confident in that than you are, but I think Auburn has the personnel to cover it up as far as, okay, if you can force a 2nd and 7 all of a sudden, then I think his snaps become a little bit more relevant. But still, I mean, this is a guy I think is going to spell Elijah McAllister a ton. And I think it's going to allow Keldrick Falk to play that backup edge role and also the backup defensive end role, because, Jeffrey Embaugh did leave a hole there. Some people want to act like Jeffrey Embaugh leaving isn't a big deal. And it may not be a huge deal, but it does impact things. Let's don't act like it doesn't. Mm-hmm. And so, Keldrick Falk being able to do kind of two different positions long-term, I love that. I absolutely love that for his development. And I mean, he can be a day one draft pick in a few years with doing stuff like that.
It also doesn't, you don't have to force Keldrick Falk and rush him along in that role, whatever role you want to play him in. If you want to start McLeod opposite of McAllister, you can do that and bring Falk along at his own pace and not put all that pressure on him as a true freshman and rush him. You don't want to rush him. You want to let him develop. Now, I think you're going to have a hard time keeping that kid off the field because of the physical attributes and what the buzz is about him anyway. But you don't have to throw him to the wolves, so to speak. You can let him develop at his own pace. I think at the end of the year, the jack position is going to be go from a room that was a weakness at Auburn to a strength.
Well, the three guys that you've got that I think this staff feels comfortable with playing right now, I love all three of them. It's just thin.
I just don't think we're done, and I don't think we're done. I think Auburn's getting one more. I think Auburn's going to get one more, and it'll be somebody that can contribute as well. And then you can rotate 4 bodies, and it's going to be a significant difference from what you saw before.
Yeah, I'd like to see one more jack. I'd like to see one more offensive lineman. I'd like to see 2 receivers.
I'd like to see 2 receivers. I'd like to see one more middle linebacker and one more safety.
You want another middle linebacker?
I do, because I like that kid from North Texas.
Oh yeah, I have seen some stuff about him. Yeah.
I like him.
I gotcha.
And another safety.
So you want a middle linebacker because you like a certain player, not because you think it's like a whole. Okay.
Yeah, gotcha. It's like if you can add that talent, you add it. That's what it's not that there's a glaring hole or a weakness or a position in need. Just add a stud.
No, I'm with you. I think that's great.
2 receivers. Yeah. I agree with you too on that, by the way.
Yeah. And I mean, I just don't think you can get a receiver until Hugh Freeze can look these kids in the eye and say, hey, this is going to be your quarterback, or we brought this quarterback in to compete. We're getting better in the quarterback room type thing.
Yeah.
Because what you've done so far hasn't moved the needle when it comes to pass catchers. And it seems like Auburn's fine from an NIL standpoint as far as offering this stuff. But it's like, I like Nick Mardner for what he is. I don't think Nick Mardner is a number 1 or a number 2 receiver. I just don't. I think he's a great piece. I think he's a great, ginormous human being that you can use in certain situations to create mismatches. And I love that. You need that. But other than Camden Brown and Javaris Johnson, I don't know. And Coy Moore, I don't love Coy Moore as an outside guy. I do love Coy Moore as an overall athlete and a receiver. But, as far as just stretching the field and making the defense defend every blade of grass, you need at least one more dude that you can line up outside. We got to get
guys open, and we got to get separation. And some of that is physical attributes. Some of that, to be quite honest with you, is coaching and schemes. And we've been lacking for years in how our receivers are getting coached and on how to get separation and running routes and all that kind of stuff. Some of it is God-given to talent and ability, but some is schematics. You can scheme people open, and Hugh Freeze and Phil Montgomery are good at that. That's why I think guys like Cam Brown and Javaris Johnson are going to eat, and anybody that gets brought in, because I think he'll scheme guys open. I really do. And think of a guy like Martin. You talked about situational. If we get inside the 10, Auburn gets inside the 10, and you throw Fairweather and Mardner in there and just start letting
and Camden. Yeah.
And Camden, whoever throw jump balls. I love that. Big body receivers that can seal and, block people out and go get the ball and high point the ball. We need that. Auburn's needed that. And I think that helps in situations.
There's no doubt. Darrell, thank you so much for your time as always, my friend. How do people check out everything that you've got going on?
Little DAP 6410 down there on Twitter. I'm in the Discord interacting there. Monday mornings at 7:10 with our good friend Ben Taylor on Auburn Opelika this morning.
Yep.
And then we got Tuesdays on the Max Roundtable about 11:15, something like that.
Darrell's all over the place. You can follow me on socials at Zac Blackerby. Read all of my written work at auburndaily.com, and we'll see you tomorrow. This has been Locked On Auburn.